What happens when two of country music's biggest voices collide in an explosive showdown that nobody saw coming? In just 23 seconds, everything fell apart. Before we dive into this unbelievable confrontation, make sure you subscribe to this channel for daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals. You won't want to miss what happens next. Last night on the Clarkson show, what was supposed to be a friendly conversation between two music icons turned into one of the most shocking moments in daytime television history. Faith Hill, the legendary country singer, sat down with Clarkson, and within minutes, the entire set became a powder keg ready to explode. The show started innocently enough. Kelly welcomed Faith onto the stage with her signature warm smile and that bubbly energy she's known for. The studio lights gleamed bright. The audience clapped and cheered enthusiastically as Faith walked out, waving and looking stunning in a black blazer with matching pants. She had her hair styled perfectly, every strand in place, looking every bit the superstar she had been for decades. The two women hugged, and Faith settled into the guest chair, crossing her legs and adjusting her microphone. But even during that hug, something felt stiff, forced. "Faith Hill, everybody," Kelly announced, her voice full of excitement, her hands clapping together. "Thank you so much for being here. I've been such a huge fan of yours for forever. Your music has been such a big part of my life." Faith smiled politely, nodding her head in acknowledgement. But if you looked closely, you could see something was off. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. There was a coldness behind them, a guardedness that seemed unusual for someone who had done hundreds of interviews over her career. "Thanks for having me, Kelly," she said, her voice measured and careful, each word chosen deliberately. Kelly settled into her own chair, still beaming with that trademark enthusiasm. "So, how are you? How's everything going?" she asked, trying to establish that friendly rapport she was known for creating with her guests. Faith shifted slightly in her seat. "I'm good," she said simply. "Busy, you know. Always busy." "I can imagine," Kelly responded, laughing lightly. "You never stop, do you? Always working on something new. Always performing. I don't know how you do it." "You just do it," Faith said, her tone flat. "That's the job." There was a brief moment of silence, slightly awkward, before Kelly continued. Kelly dove right in, asking about Faith's latest projects and her incredible career spanning decades. "You've had such an amazing journey," Kelly said, leaning back in her chair. "From those early days in Nashville to becoming one of the biggest names in country music. What keeps you motivated after all these years?" Faith answered the questions, but her responses were short, clipped, lacking the warmth and detail that guests usually provided. "The music keeps me motivated," she said. "The fans. The art of it all." Each answer felt like pulling teeth, like she was determined to give the bare minimum and nothing more. The energy between them felt strange, uncomfortable, like there was something unspoken hanging in the air. A thick tension that neither woman wanted to acknowledge, but both could feel. The audience seemed to sense it too. The usual laughter and applause felt forced, nervous. People shifted in their seats, exchanging glances with each other, wondering if they were imagining the awkwardness or if it was really as bad as it felt. Kelly pushed forward, professional as always, trying different angles to get Faith to open up. She asked about Faith's songwriting process, about her favorite performances, about what inspired her latest work. But every question was met with the same guarded responses, the same careful words that revealed nothing personal, nothing real. Then Kelly brought up Faith's marriage to Tim McGraw, and that's when things started to shift in a more obvious way. "You and Tim have been together for so long," Kelly said, leaning forward, her eyes bright with genuine curiosity. "Like, seriously, what's the secret? Because, relationships in this industry are so hard. I think everyone watching would love to know how you two make it work year after year." Faith's jaw tightened visibly. You could see the muscles in her face clench, her shoulders tense up. "We work at it," she said simply, her voice taking on an edge. Every day. It's not a secret. It's just commitment and effort. Kelly nodded enthusiastically, not picking up on the warning signs that Faith was getting increasingly uncomfortable. That's beautiful. And I heard that you two are working on some new music together. That must be so exciting, getting to collaborate with your husband, mixing your personal and professional lives like that. We're always making music, Faith replied, her tone cooling noticeably with each perfected word. It's what we do. It's what we've always done. There was an awkward pause that seemed to stretch on forever. Kelly glanced down at her notes, then back at Faith, clearly sensing that the interview wasn't going the way she had planned. The producers in the booth were probably panicking, wondering how to salvage this increasingly uncomfortable situation. So, I wanted to ask you about something, she said, her voice taking on a more serious tone, the brightness fading from her expression. There's been some talk in the industry about artists from your generation and how you feel about the new wave of country music. Some people have said that you've been critical of the direction country music is heading. You know, with the pop influences, the younger artists coming in with different sounds. Faith's eyes narrowed immediately, her whole body language shifting from guarded to defensive in an instant. Who said that? She asked sharply, leaning forward in her chair, her gaze locked on Kelly with an intensity that was almost frightening. Kelly looked surprised by the sharpness in Faith's voice, taken aback by the sudden shift in energy. Her eyebrows raised slightly, and she blinked a few times before responding. Well, there have been some interviews where people interpreted your comments as being, maybe a little critical of where country music is going these days. I'm just curious about your thoughts on interpreted? Faith interrupted, her voice rising slightly, cutting Kelly off mid-sentence. Or twisted? Because there's a big difference, Kelly. A really big difference. And I'm getting tired of people interpreting what I say to fit whatever narrative they want to push. The studio audience went quiet. You could hear a pin drop. The cameraman kept filming, but you could sense their discomfort behind their equipment. Kelly shifted in her seat, clearly not expecting this reaction, not prepared for this level of hostility. Her smile faltered, replaced by a look of confusion mixed with growing irritation. I'm not trying to twist anything, she said defensively, her voice taking on a harder edge. I'm just asking about comments that you made publicly. This is based on actual interviews you've given, not something I made up. Comments that were taken out of context. Faith shot back, her voice getting louder, her southern accent becoming more pronounced with her anger. And I find it interesting that you're bringing this up now, on your show, in front of all these people, like you're trying to start something, like you're trying to create some kind of controversy where there isn't one. Kelly's face flushed, a red color creeping up her neck and into her cheeks. Faith, I'm not trying to start anything. I'm asking you a question that I think my audience is curious about. That's literally my job as a talk show host. I ask questions. That's what I do every single day. Your job? Faith repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm, her eyes flashing with anger. Is your job to ambush your guests with loaded questions and try to make them look bad? Is that what you think good hosting is? Because that's not what I signed up for when I agreed to come on this show. Kelly's expression hardened, the friendly, bubbly host persona completely cracking and falling away. Her jaw set in a firm line, and her eyes went cold. I didn't ambush you, Faith. These are legitimate questions based on things you've said in public forums, in interviews with other hosts, in magazine articles. If you don't want to answer them, that's totally fine. But don't sit here and act like I'm attacking you when I'm doing my damn job. You know what, Kelly? Faith said, leaning forward in her chair even more, her voice rising to a level that made several audience members visibly uncomfortable. I think you're jealous. I think you're threatened by artists who actually built their careers on talent and authenticity, not by winning a damn reality show and having a record deal handed to them on a silver platter. The audience gasped collectively, a sharp intake of breath that echoed through the studio. This was getting ugly, fast, spiraling out of control, in a way that nobody could have predicted. Kelly's eyes went wide with shock and anger, her mouth dropping open in disbelief. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice sharp as a knife, cutting through the tension. "Are you seriously going there right now? Are you really going to sit on my show and insult me like that?" "I'm going there," Faith said, standing up from her chair abruptly, her movement so sudden that it startled people in the front row. "Because I'm tired of people like you, acting like you know everything about this industry, when you got your career handed to you on a silver platter. You didn't have to struggle. You didn't have to fight for every single opportunity. You didn't have to play dive bars and small venues, hoping someone would notice. You just sang a few songs, won a contest, and suddenly you're an expert on country music? Suddenly you get to question people who've been doing this for decades?" Kelly stood up too, her hands balled into fists at her sides, her entire body radiating anger. "First of all, Faith, you don't know a damn thing about my struggle or what I've been through to get where I am. You don't know about the rejection, the criticism, the people who told me I wasn't good enough. Second of all, I never claimed to be an expert on country music. I'm a talk show host asking a question. That's it. And third, the fact that you're this defensive, this angry, tells me that maybe those comments people are talking about were exactly what you meant. Maybe you are bitter about the way things are changing." "Oh, so now you're psychoanalyzing me?" Faith snapped, throwing her hands up in exasperation. "That's rich, coming from someone who spends every episode of their show crying about their feelings and acting like they're everyone's best friend. It's fake, Kelly. This whole thing is fake. This set, this interview, you. All of it is manufactured bullshit, designed to make you look relatable when you're just another Hollywood phony." The studio fell into shocked silence, the kind of silence that feels heavy and oppressive. Crew members looked at each other, mouths open, not knowing what to do, whether they should intervene or just keep filming this train wreck. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of this disaster, every angry word, every furious gesture. Kelly's voice dropped low, dangerous, shaking with barely controlled rage. "You need to leave," she said slowly, deliberately, each word enunciated perfectly. "Right now, get off my stage. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not standing here and letting you insult me on my own show." "Gladly," Faith said, reaching up and ripping off her microphone with such force that the wire snapped, throwing it onto the chair where it bounced and fell to the floor. "I don't need this bullshit anyway. I don't need you. I don't need this show. And I sure as hell don't need to stand here and be disrespected by someone who thinks they're better than everyone else." "Great," Kelly shouted, her Texas accent getting thicker with her anger, her voice echoing through the studio. "And for the record, Faith, talent isn't just about how long you've been in the industry or how many awards you've won. It's about connecting with people. It's about being genuine. It's about growth and evolution, which is something you clearly forgot how to do a long time ago. You're stuck in the past, and you're bitter about it." Faith spun around, her face red with fury, her hands trembling. "You want to talk about connecting with people? Kelly, you're a product. You're manufactured. Everything about you is calculated to make people like you, from your hair, to your smile, to every word that comes out of your mouth. But underneath all that bubbly crap, you're just as insecure as everyone else in this town. Maybe even more so, because you know deep down that you didn't earn this the way the rest of us did. Get out," Kelly yelled, pointing toward the exit with a shaking hand, her finger jabbing the air. "Security! Get her out of here! I want her gone! Now!" But Faith was already walking away, her heels clicking loudly on the stage floor with each angry step. She didn't look back, didn't say another word, didn't give Kelly the satisfaction of seeing any more emotion on her face. She just kept walking, her head held high, despite the anger radiating from every inch of her body, past the shocked audience members who sat frozen in their seats, past the crew members who pressed themselves against walls to get out of her way, past the cameras that tracked her movement, until she disappeared behind the curtain. The sound of her footsteps echoed even after she was out of sight, and then there was just silence. Kelly stood there, breathing hard, her chest rising and falling rapidly, her hands shaking visibly at her sides. The audience sat in stunned silence, not sure if they should applaud or just stay quiet, their faces showing a mix of shock, discomfort, and disbelief. Some people's mouths were still hanging open. Others were whispering to the people next to them, trying to process what they had just seen. Kelly ran her hand through her hair, trying to compose herself, trying to find some semblance of the professional host she was supposed to be. "Well," she said, her voice unsteady, cracking slightly on the word, "that just happened. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back," she paused, laughing bitterly, a sound with no humor in it whatsoever. "Actually, I don't even know what's happening when we come back. Just stay with us. If you want to, I don't know anymore." The cameras cut away, but the damage was already done, irreversible and complete. In less than 10 minutes, what was supposed to be a simple, friendly interview had turned into an all-out war between two of the biggest names in music. Faith Hill had stormed off Kelly Clarkson's show after a confrontation that nobody saw coming, and the whole world was about to watch it happen, to dissect every word, every gesture, every moment of this catastrophic exchange. As Kelly stood on that stage, still processing what had just occurred, trying to calm her breathing and slow her racing heart, one thing was crystal clear. This wasn't just a bad interview. This wasn't just an awkward moment that could be edited out or glossed over. This was a full-blown disaster that would be talked about for years to come, analyzed and reanalyzed, replayed over and over. The tension had been building from the moment Faith sat down, simmering beneath every clipped answer and forced smile, lurking behind every careful word and guarded expression, until it finally erupted in a blaze of accusations, insults, and anger that neither woman could control or take back. Faith's exit was final, dramatic, and complete. No reconciliation, no apologies, no coming back from commercial break to smooth things over and pretend it was all a misunderstanding. She was gone, leaving behind only the echo of her heels on the stage and a studio full of people who couldn't believe what they had just witnessed, who would carry this story with them for the rest of their lives. Kelly's show had seen its share of emotional moments over the years, tears and laughter and heartfelt conversations. But this was different. This was raw, unfiltered conflict between two powerful women who had finally said what they really thought. Consequences be damned. The friendly facade had shattered, revealing the real feelings that had been hiding underneath all along. The argument had escalated so quickly that nobody had time to stop it. From Faith's first defensive answer to her final angry exit, the entire confrontation had unfolded in mated, real time, each comment more cutting than the last. Kelly's questions had hit a nerve. Faith's response had been explosive, and from there, it was like watching a car crash in slow motion. You wanted to look away, but you couldn't. What made it even more shocking was how personal it got. These weren't just two professionals disagreeing about music or the industry. They had attacked each other's character, their authenticity, their entire careers. Faith had called Kelly fake and manufactured. Kelly had accused Faith of being defensive and out of touch. Both women had crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed, saying things that couldn't be taken back. The audience had come expecting a fun, light-hearted conversation between two talented singers. Instead, they got a masterclass in how quickly things can go wrong when egos clash and old resentments bubble to the surface. They had witnessed something rare in daytime television, a complete and total breakdown of civility, where the usual scripts and pleasantries were thrown out the window in favor of brutal honesty. Faith's accusation about Kelly's reality show, Past, was particularly brutal. It touched on something that many successful artists from shows like American Idol have dealt with for years: the idea that they didn't earn their success the traditional way. Kelly had obviously heard this criticism before, and Faith knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. It was a calculated insult designed to hurt, and it worked. Kelly's response was equally cutting. By calling Faith a product and accusing her of being fake, she was attacking the very foundation of Faith's legendary status. Faith Hill had built her career on being authentic, genuine, and real. To have someone call that into question, especially on national television, was devastating. It was the kind of insult that couldn't be laughed off or ignored. The speed at which the situation deteriorated was breathtaking. One moment, they were having a tense but manageable conversation. The next, they were screaming at each other, with Kelly ordering Faith off her stage, and Faith more than happy to oblige. There was no cooling off period, no moment where one of them tried to de-escalate. They both just kept pushing, kept digging deeper, until the only option left was for Faith to leave. Security had been called, though Faith didn't wait for them to arrive. She took control of her own exit, refusing to be escorted out like some troublemaker who had crashed the show. She left on her own terms, angry and defiant, making it clear that she was done with this conversation and done with Kelly Clarkson's show. The finality of her departure was unmistakable. She wasn't storming off in a huff, planning to cool down and come back. She was gone for good. The crew members standing around the stage looked shell-shocked. This wasn't in anyone's script or plan for the day. Talk shows occasionally have awkward moments or tense interviews, but they rarely devolve into full-blown shouting matches that end with the guest walking off set. The producers would have to figure out how to fill the rest of the episode, but that was the least of their concerns. The real question was what would happen when this footage got out. Kelly's attempt to compose herself after Faith left showed just how rattled she was. Her usual poise and professionalism had been completely shaken by the confrontation. She tried to make a joke, tried to move forward, but you could hear the tremor in her voice. This wasn't how her show was supposed to go. She prided herself on making her guests feel comfortable and having genuine conversations. This had been anything but comfortable or genuine. The audience's silence spoke volumes. They didn't know whether to support Kelly, sympathize with Faith, or just sit there in shock. They had become unwilling witnesses to a very public falling out between two people who clearly had issues that went far deeper than whatever question Kelly had asked. The tension had been there from the start, waiting for the right moment to explode. Faith's microphone throw was the perfect punctuation to her exit. It wasn't a gentle removal of the equipment. It was a violent, angry gesture that showed exactly how done she was with the entire situation. That microphone flying through the air and landing on the chair would become one of the most replayed moments of the confrontation, a physical manifestation of her fury. The personal nature of the insults made it clear that this wasn't just about one bad interview or one misunderstood comment. There was history here, feelings that had been building up for who knows how long. Maybe they had mutual friends who had said things. Maybe they had been at the same events and rubbed each other the wrong way. Whatever the backstory was, it all came pouring out in those few minutes on stage, ugly and unfiltered. Kelly's command for Faith to leave was powerful in its own right. She wasn't asking or suggesting. She was ordering Faith off her stage, asserting her authority as the host, and making it clear that Faith had crossed a line. In that moment, Kelly went from trying to have a conversation to actively kicking someone off her show. It was a dramatic shift that showed just how far things had fallen apart. The fact that both women stood up turned the confrontation into something even more intense. They weren't sitting comfortably in their chairs, having a heated discussion. They were on their feet, facing each other, voices raised, body language aggressive. It looked less like a talk show interview and more like a street fight about to break out. The physical shift mirrored the emotional escalation. Faith's parting shots about Kelly being insecure and manufactured were clearly meant to linger. She didn't just leave quietly after Kelly told her to go. She had to get in those final words, those last cutting remarks that would stick with Kelly long after the dash. Cameras stopped rolling. It was about winning the argument, about having the last word, about making sure Kelly knew exactly how Faith felt. When Faith finally walked away, disappearing behind that curtain, it felt like the end of something bigger than just one bad interview. It felt like a relationship destroyed, a bridge burned, a professional connection severed permanently. There would be no friendly run-ins at award shows, no collaboration rumors, no stories about how they patched things up. This was done, finished, over. Kelly's realization that she didn't even know how to continue the show after what had just happened was brutally honest. She couldn't just bring out the next guest and pretend nothing had occurred. She couldn't pivot to a cooking segment or a musical performance like everything was normal. The entire energy of the studio had been shattered by the confrontation, and everyone knew it. The audience would leave that taping with a story to tell, a piece of television history that they witnessed firsthand. They would talk about it for years, describing exactly where they were sitting, what they saw, what they felt. It would become their claim to fame, their connection to one of the most explosive talk show moments ever captured on camera. As the dust settled and the crew tried to figure out what to do next, one truth remained undeniable. Faith Hill had left that stage, and she wasn't coming back.